Did you know that 67% of PC gamers are playing on hardware that doesn't even meet the recommended specs for today's AAA titles? If your games stutter, freeze, or crash to desktop, your PC might be bottlenecked by your CPU, GPU, RAM, or even in some cases your storage. Before you go and drop thousands on a new rig, I'm going to show you exactly which part is holding you back potentially and how to squeeze every last frame per second out of the hardware you already have. Today I'm answering the question that every PC player secretly has. Can your current hardware actually handle the games you want to play? Because understanding your CPU, GPU, RAM and storage limits isn't just nerd stuff. It's the difference between smooth 120 FPS and rage quitting at 30 FPS. But here's the good news. You probably don't need a whole new PC. In a lot of cases, it's about identifying the bottlenecks and optimizing what you already have. That's whether you're on a budget build, a mid-range 1080p setup, or something older you're trying to keep alive. So stick around because I'm going to show you how to figure out exactly what your rig can do in 2025. And here's the reality check. You install that brand new AAA game you've been hyped about for months. The splash screen loads, the music kicks in, and then frame drops, texture pop in, input delay, 30-second loading screens. What's happening under the hood is this. Your GPU is trying to push high-res textures, ray tracing, and complex shaders it was never really designed for. Your CPU is juggling AI, physics, background processes, and the game engine all at once. Your RAM is filling up with massive open world assets that need to load in and out as you move. You can see the problem here. And then to top it off, if you're still on a hard drive, your storage is bottlenecking asset streaming, which is why textures and models sometimes load late. Game engines like Unreal Engine 5 or modern custom engines are built around features like dynamic lighting, real-time global illumination, and high-density geometry. That's absolutely amazing for visuals, but it absolutely punishes older GPUs and CPUs. And here's the really quite frustrating part. Console generations last 7 to 8 years with fixed hardware. PC hardware cycles move every 1 to 2 years, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to keep up. Developers optimize the latest consoles and the newer PC GPUs, but if you're still on a 2018 to 19 graphics card, you're asking it to render worlds that are significantly more complex than what it was actually built for. To make it even worse, not every bad experience is your fault. Sometimes poor PC ports and bad optimization make a game run badly, even on good hardware. So now you're stuck asking, is the PC the problem or is it a broken port? And that's exactly the question I'm going to try and help you answer today. Here's the number that might blow your mind. According to the Steam hardware survey, over 40% of gamers are still on GPUs from 2019 or earlier. That means almost half of PC gamers are trying to run 2025 level games on hardware designed for 2017-2019 era workloads. So think of trying to run Cyberpunk with ray tracing on a GTX 1060. It is technically possible, but you're basically running a marathon in flip-flops. Now, developers themselves know this, which is why they publish minimum and recommended specs. But here's the translation that they often don't give you. Minimum specs equals barely playable at 720p, low settings, 30 FPS if everything goes right and you have all your fingers crossed. Recommended specs, solid 1080p, medium high settings, 60 FPS in most scenes. If you actually want 1440p, ultra or high refresh rate, you usually need to be above recommended by a full tier or more. So with games like GTA 6 coming, the gap between what people have and what new games demand is about to get a little bit bigger. We're entering an era where hardware requirements don't just inch up, they spike quite massively. But here is the silver lining in it all. Competitive players already run lower graphics settings for higher FPS and less visual clutter. The difference between high and ultra in many games is tiny visually, but it can actually cost you 20 to 30% performance. So no, you don't always need a new £1,000 or dollar GPU. You need to know what matters and what can safely turn down without ruining experience. So now I'm answering the question, how do I figure out whether it's my CPU, my GPU, or my RAM, or even storage that's holding me back? Well, this is where real-time monitoring tools become your best friend. So forget guessing. We're actually going to be able to get some real-world data that you can use to tweak your system. So my go-to here is MSI Afterburner combined with its River Tuner Statistics Server, or RTSS overlay. Good thing about it is it's free if you haven't seen it, and it gives you a live readout of all of your system's vitals right in game. So quick setup guide for you. Obviously, download and install the MSI Afterburner. Make sure RTSS is also installed. Open up Afterburner, go to the settings and then the monitoring tab. And what you want to do here is enable monitoring for GPU usage, CPU, RAM usage, as well as GPU temp and CPU temp. Click the checkmark next to each and then click show in on screen display. I struggled to say that one a minute ago. So now all you have to do is launch your game and you'll see an overlay with all of your stats on it. Here's probably the most important bit, and that is how to actually interpret it. So you've got a GPU bottleneck if your GPU usage is consistently at 95 to 99% and your FPS is lower than you want. While your CPU usage is relatively low, so 50 to 70%, then this indicates the GPU is the primary bottleneck. Essentially, it's working as hard as it can, but it can't push out any more frames. In all honesty, this is often the ideal bottleneck as it means your GPU is being fully utilised. So in terms of CPU bottleneck, if your CPU usage, especially on 1 or 2 cores, is at 95 to 99, but your GPU usage is significantly lower, so 60 to 80%, then your CPU is struggling to feed frames to the GPU fast enough. This in itself leads to lower FPS and often more stuttering. RAM bottlenecks, if your RAM usage is near 100%, so 15 to 16 gigabytes, and you're seeing frequent stutters, texture pop-in, or even crashes, you're likely running out of memory. The system is then forced to use slower page files on your storage. So now we've got to storage bottlenecks. So this is actually harder to see in a live overlay, but if you have long loading times, you've got texture streaming issues or stutters when entering areas in open world games, and you're still on a traditional HDD, your storage is likely the culprit. Basically, once you know what the bottleneck is, you can then apply the right optimizations, which will then in turn help you out. And I'm actually going to cover that off next. Let's say you can't upgrade right now. Maybe you're on a GTX 660, RX 580 or something similar, and you need it to last another year. I don't blame you. So here's how to squeeze every last frame out of your current setup, starting with software, because this is the easiest win. So first and foremost, update your GPU drivers. Go to GeForce Experience for NVIDIA or Radeon software for AMD and make sure you install those latest game-ready drivers. New drivers themselves can give you 5 to 15% performance boosts in newer titles. It also fixes crashes or stutters. NVIDIA does actually often prompt you to do this in-app, which is quite handy. Second, close those background apps. Discord overlays, Chrome with 20 tabs, Spotify, game launchers, these all steal CPU cycles and RAM. Open up Task Manager, go to Processes, sort by CPU and memory, and shut down anything you don't need while gaming. Third, optimize in-game settings in the right order. Not all graphics settings hit performance equally. Here's your priority list. First, anti-aliasing. Turn it down first. Use TAA or FXAA instead of MSAA or SSAA, which are much cheaper on performance. Shadows drop to medium or low. Shadow quality is one of the biggest FPS killers. Ambient, occlusion and volumetrics, fog, God rays, clouds, set these to low or off for bigger gains. Motion blur and depth field, turn them off. You gain performance and most players prefer the look. What do you actually keep higher though? Well, textures, if you've enough VRAM, keep textures on high. They don't usually cost any more frames, but they can dramatically improve visual clarity. View distance, medium-high is fine in most games. If there's a resolution scale slider, try 90 to 85%. You drop internal resolution slightly, but you gain a nice FPS boost with barely noticeable quality or loss, basically. Fourth, use the performance features built into modern GPUs. On NVIDIA, enable DLSS. On NVIDIA Reflex, it's supported in most games. On AMD, enable SFR and Radeon anti-lag. Upscaling like DLSS or FSR can almost double your FPS by rendering at a lower resolution and upscaling smartly. For example, DLSS quality mode on a RTX 3060 can make it perform closer to a higher tier card, especially at 1440p. Wow, that last segment was a little bit quick, so let me slow it down a little bit now and talk hardware optimizations that don't require buying a whole new PC. So, first and foremost, number one, clean your PC. I believe I've mentioned it before, but it is important to cover it again. Dust buildup increases temperatures, and when your GPU or your CPU overheats, they thermal throttle, meaning that they slow themselves down to avoid damage. So key here is to power off, unplug, use compressed air to blow out fans, heat sinks and filters themselves. Do this every 3 to 6 months. As I said, touched on it before, but basically better thermals alone can recover 10 to 15% performance in some cases. I'm actually a little bit of a clean freak myself, so my PC actually gets blasted once a month or so. So number two, improve your case airflow. Make sure all of your cables aren't blocking fans. Ideally have at least one intake and one exhaust fan. Probably another key tip is to keep the case a little bit away from walls or heat sources. Basically, cooler components maintain higher boost clocks and therefore better FPS. So number three is the mild or safer overclocking and memory tuning. So with tools like MSA or MSI Afterburner, you can bump your GPU score clock by 50 to 100 MHz. Essentially, test for stability and gain 5 to 10% performance for absolute free. In your BIOS, enable XMP for Intel or DOCP or Expo for AMD, so that your RAM actually runs as its rated speed, not just a slower default. The key here is just don't go crazy. Small incremental changes plus stability tests. And that's it for today, guys. That wraps up our deep dive into optimizing your gaming rig for 2025. If you made it this far, thank you very much. I actually genuinely appreciate every one of you that sticks around to the end and also engages with the content. Really do appreciate it. Now I want a bit of participation from you. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled on the YouTube community tab in the coming days. I'm going to run a poll or just basically ask you guys what you want to see on the next video, whether that's a specific game benchmark, a deep dive into a new or different piece of hardware, literally anything. So yeah, ask away, and who knows, if there's a truly epic idea that completely blows my mind, I might just give you a shout out in the next video. So Hit that like button if you found this useful, and subscribe for more tech tips or insights just like this one. I am going to leave you with one last question though. So, what is the oldest GPU that you are still gaming on? As always, I'm curious, or maybe just a little bit nosy. Thanks again for watching. Keep those frame rates high and those temperatures low.